This is Dr. W.T. Roush, Chiropractor of Pueblo, Colorado. I'm going to tell you on this record how you can develop new business from old business, how you too can develop a sound referral practice. The ideas expressed on this record and the other records in this album will work for you. They represent over 100 years of chiropractic experience. They will work in your town. They will work in any town because they are logical, honest, and stimulating. As we travel, consulting with chiropractors on individual problems, and as we speak before chiropractic conventions across the United States and Canada, we are asked frequently to give our ideas on developing a referral practice. One of the most frequently asked questions is the easiest to answer. That question is, when should I start a referral practice? And my answer in every case is, right now. Right now is the time if you are starting in practice. Right now is the time if you have been in practice for years. Now, see if any of the following typical questions and comments are in your mind. Dr. Roush, how can I increase my referrals? Or, my patients don't refer their friends to me. What can I do about it? Number 3, why don't my patients bring in their families? Number 4, I would like to have a referral practice, but it can't be done in my town. And number 5 goes like this. How do I get out of an advertising type practice and into a referral practice? I have good chiropractic technique, and I get good results, but I don't get many referrals. As a consequence, I have to spend several $100s each month on newspaper advertising. I spend money on pamphlets to mail out, and I've had television and radio programs going. Yet I have to scratch hard to keep my practice rolling. I have a friend in the next town. We were college classmates. We use the same technique and we get about the same results. But you know, his office is full of patients all of the time, and he never advertises. What's the difference, Dr. Roush? If any of those are your thoughts, you need help in acquiring a referral practice. Fortunately, you can take action beginning now with the practice you have to build a referral practice. You can do this without the expenditure of 1 cent. It will, however, require your effort. A referral practice is not built on a series of gizmos, gadgets, or gimmicks. Instead, it is built on the whole doctor. What kind of a man are you in your home? Are you the type who criticizes, condemns, and complains? Are you quick to find fault with your neighbor, your family, and church? What kind of a man are you in your community? Do you constantly talk about high taxes, rough streets, and crooked politicians? What kind of a man are you in your practice? Do you show it the respect it so richly deserves? Or are you complaining that the fellow up the street is stealing your patients and the fellow down the street is overcharging? Successful referral practices require an attitude of helping rather than hurting, complimenting rather than criticizing, and a happy, friendly, interesting personality rather than a fault-finding, negative individual. Remember, you cannot be a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde. You cannot assume one personality for your home or community and another in the office. The foundation of a referral practice is good chiropractic results. All referral practices stand first on good results. It is immaterial at this moment whether you practice this technique or that technique, but it is material whether you practice your technique to the best of your ability. You must constantly be aware of changes and improvements. You cannot use horse and buggy methods and deliver jet-age results. It is imperative that you be better today than you were yesterday, but strive to be better tomorrow than you are today. Pay attention to the little things today and receive big benefits tomorrow. The doctor who gives his attention to the little details of his chiropractic procedure is the same doctor who will give his close attention to the little details that cause patients to want to refer their family, friends, and neighbors. The 7-point formula to use in building a referral practice is found in the word results. R-E-S-U-L-T-S. R stands for referral concept. E stands for educate. S stands for stimulate patients to refer. U stands for utilize your knowledge. L stands for love of doctor for patient. T stands for technique, and S stands for service. Let's go through the results formula in detail, one letter at a time. If you will use the ideas presented here, you will begin to build a referral practice at once. Remember, R stands for the referral concept you are going to implant in the patient. 8 examples are on this record. You can begin using the referral concept the first time you see a patient, as I did in the following case. Here is example number 1. Mrs. Peyton was in my office for the first time. I knew that another patient of mine, Mrs. Ray, had advised her to see me, but I said this: "Mrs. Peyton, who referred you to chiropractic?" She smiled and said, "Mrs. Ray sent me, doctor." I said, "Oh, yes, wasn't that nice of her? Because of her, you know chiropractic gets sick people well. Isn't it nice, too, that because of you, others are going to also get well?" Example number 2. One doctor I know uses this sentence to implant the referral concept. He says to a patient, "Mrs. Smith, I'll bet your friends are beginning to wonder what your secret is for getting well, aren't they?" And Mrs. Smith usually replies like this: "Yes, they certainly are, doctor. My neighbor is talking about coming to see you." And here is example number 3 of the referral concept. When a patient is in your office and you have completed your care of him for the day, and you are visiting with him for a moment, say this: "Tell me, how's your family?" That question proves to him that you are interested in him and his family. The chiropractor who is interested in the patient and his family soon becomes the family chiropractor. When I ask that question, I am thinking of things specific. You see, in taking the case history, I learned that the mother has asthma, that the little boy gets colds frequently, and that the young girl is having menstrual difficulty. So when I say, "How's your family?" I'm really saying, "How is your wife's asthma? Isn't it about time we get your son in here and get him in condition so he won't have so many colds?" And I'm saying, "Let's get your daughter over her menstrual cramps." Example number 4. A question that has never failed yet to produce the proper answer is, "There surely are many sick people in this world, aren't there, Mrs. Jones?" Always, Mrs. Jones will reply this way: "Yes, doctor, there certainly are a lot of sick people in this world. My husband had a gallbladder attack just last week." Or she will say, "I noticed that my neighbor's having an awful time getting up the steps now that her rheumatism is so bad." Another answer she may give is this: "Doctor, I was just wondering if you think chiropractic could help my sister-in-law." When a person asks questions such as those, he is interested in a particular case, not in generalities. A patient may ask a general question, but he has a specific person in mind. He is saying, "Doctor, can you help my brother get well?" And when he is in that frame of mind, that is the time for you to move. Make an appointment for that sick person. How to handle such an appointment is made clear in the Stimulate Patients to Refer portion of this record. Some chiropractors have the opinion that if they make an appointment under these circumstances, they are being greedy, and that it is unprofessional to do this. Let me ask you, doctor, which is more unprofessional, to let the person stay sick, or to make an appointment and get the sick person into your hands and get him well? Too many times a doctor is confused about this. He feels that if he takes the steps to get a sick person into his office, that he is asking for money. If you have this feeling, doctor, think instead of the services you can give the sick and suffering of your town. Think of the patients you're caring for now, and how much better that patient will be when his or her sick child, or her sick husband, or her sick friend gets well. Divest yourself of thoughts of the almighty dollar. Think in terms of service. Concentrate upon service, and the dollars will take care of themselves. Referral concept number 5. I wanted to thank Mrs. Green for having referred a patient to me, and I did it in this way. Mrs. Green, I said, you remind me of the Good Samaritan. Why, doctor, what do you mean? She asked. And I said, you know the story in the Bible of the Good Samaritan, don't you, Mrs. Green? Remember, the sick one was beside the road, and several persons passed him by. But the Good Samaritan saw him and took him to the innkeeper to restore his health. You are like the Good Samaritan, and I'm like the innkeeper. And of course, we know the Bible gives the credit to the Good Samaritan, doesn't it? Doctor, she said, that's the finest compliment I have ever received. She appreciated it, for she has been a Good Samaritan many times since. Referral concept number 6. Give good literature to a patient when you think he is in the frame of mind to read it. Give him information on the general results of chiropractic. Say this to him. Here, I know you will enjoy this. Look it over, and I will discuss it with you next time. When he returns the next time, say this. You found that very interesting, didn't you? I'm sure it stimulated you to think of several of your friends who need chiropractic care. Here, jot their names and troubles down on this piece of paper, and I will send them more information. Example number 7. This idea is certain to implant the referral concept into many of your patients. I happened onto this idea several years ago when I wanted to know what area of town most of my patients were from. Get a large map of your city. Attach it to a framed cork or fiber board and hang it on the wall in a place where no one can miss it. Stick a large hat pin into the map at the location of your office. Let a smaller pin with a colored head represent a patient. Stick a pin into the map at the location of each patient's home. Important, use a pin with a red head to represent a patient who has referred as many as 10 other patients to you. For each out-of-town and out-of-state patient, print the name of that patient's town on a paper flag and attach it to the pin. Then stick the pin into the edge of the map. Place a neatly lettered sign above the map. This sign should say, "We appreciate you." Each pin represents a patient in our active file who was referred by other patients. Now, watch for the tremendous interest this idea is sure to arouse. After I hung up my map, one man walked over to it, looked for his pin, found it, and then saw there were many pins in his neighborhood. He said, "My gosh, there's so many from my neighborhood, I think I'll start a carpool." A lady, searching the map for her pin, said to me, "Well, this is very interesting, Dr. Roush, but what are the red pins for?" That was my opportunity to implant the referral concept in her mind. "Those pins represent patients who have referred as many as 10 patients to me," I said. "Mrs. Ackerman, I would surely like to put a red pin in there for you." And it wasn't long before Mrs. Ackerman was represented by a red pin. You see, patients are proud to refer to chiropractors who get results, but it is up to you to instill the referral concept within them. This is example number 8, the last example for R, the referral concept. I said to a patient, "John, many of my patients refer their friends to me, and I like to thank them for it. And I want to thank you right now. I'm sure you've referred several here." John said, "No, doctor, I haven't. But I have wanted to talk to you about one of the fellows on the job with me. He has sciatica." There again, I successfully planted the seed of the referral concept. This man with sciatica came to me and got well. Be sure to thank your patients when they refer others to you. Complete the cycle of appreciation, and your patients will refer others readily. The second point in the results formula is E. E represents educate. You must educate your patients. After you have made a competent consultation, examination, and explanation, the patient knows that chiropractic is effective in his particular case, and he knows that it's effective in the case of the patient who referred him. But he does not know the overall concept of chiropractic. Therefore, it is wise to give him information from time to time on which conditions chiropractic can help. It is unnecessary to give him an education in physiology, how it works, but rather that it works. The following instance shows how easily this can be done. A patient of mine was cooperating very well. In spite of her physical condition, she always kept her appointment, rain or shine. On one of those bad weather days, I said to her, "You surely are a wonderful patient. I appreciate your cooperation. You're always here as you should be. Why, the way you cooperate reminds me of a little boy who was brought in here with asthma. No matter what the weather was, that child got in here as he should. He got good results, too. You know, he's now playing football on one of the high school teams." Now let's analyze what I just said. I said that I appreciate my patients, that cooperation makes for better results, and that chiropractic is very effective in cases of asthma. It was no coincidence that I chose asthma, because I knew that this woman had an acquaintance whose child had asthma. If the child had been suffering from another disorder, I would have reached into my memory file and used another appropriate example. One doctor I know says this to his patients: "Everybody knows chiropractic is good for leg ache, backache, arm pain, and colds. But not everyone knows that chiropractic is good for diseases of the internal organs, such as stomach trouble, kidney disorders, high blood pressure, and rheumatic fever." Note how cleverly this doctor has said, everybody knows leg ache, backache, arm pain, and colds yield to chiropractic care, but not everyone knows that chiropractic is effective in these other conditions. Note how in one statement he educated the patient to a broader knowledge of the value of chiropractic. Now turn this record over for the second half of New Business from Old Business. Now we will continue with the second portion of New Business from Old Business. S represents stimulate patients to refer. I have a rule that the receptionist is to hand me a note on nearly every patient before I see the patient. If I don't receive a note on at least 1 out of 3 patients, we have a little session about this. These notes may be about anything that concerns the patient. For instance, Mrs. Carr is able to use her arm much better today. Mr. Bean isn't in a very good mood. I think his head is aching. Mrs. Carter made her little girl's dress. Then when those patients come into my office, I already know a bit about them. It's very easy for me to say, "You ought to be getting along a lot better now, Mrs. Carr. How is that arm doing?" From the note, I know her arm is better, but I stimulate her to a happy thought in the very beginning. But when Mr. Bean comes in, I don't ask him about his headache. I examine him at once and find out what he needs. Then I say to him, "Well, boy, this isn't so good today. Is that head aching?" Mrs. Carter brings her little girl in, and I admire the little girl, the first thing, by saying, my, what a sweet little girl. Did Mama make that pretty dress for you?" Do you see what I'm doing? I'm telling the little girl how cute she is, for I love children. At the same time, I'm giving the mother a double compliment by admiring her child's dress and her child. Suppose Mrs. Wilson tells me that she did not drive to my office today, but that a friend brought her. I have that information on a note. That is my cue to say, "That's fine. Is your friend well, or did she want to see me?" Often a stimulant like that is all that is needed to make a patient's friend into a patient. You see, I suspected the friend was not well and needed a chiropractor. And I suspected also that before making any commitment, she wanted to get into my office to see for herself that it's clean, that it's well maintained, and that it's properly run, and there's nothing to fear. When a patient remarks about the good response he has made, that is the time to stimulate him to tell you of his sick friends. Everyone has sick friends, everyone. But often a patient doesn't know that chiropractic may answer a sick friend's problem. When he asks questions like these, "Doctor, is chiropractic good for rheumatism? Is chiropractic good for heart trouble?" And of course, you know that it is, and you tell him so, and then say, "Do you have a friend with heart trouble? Tell me about your friend. Does he live here in town? Would you like for me to give you some literature for your friend? Well, just give me his name and I'll mail it to him for you." Now hear this very important example of how to stimulate a referral. Mrs. Baxter had asked me if chiropractic was good for rheumatism. She had said that a friend who had rheumatism wanted to know if I could help her. Naturally, I was able to tell Mrs. Baxter that chiropractic results with rheumatism are generally good. And I had gone on to say, "Mrs. Baxter, tell you what let's do. Let's make it convenient for your friend to get in here. We'll reserve a time for her when you are due, and she can come in with you. When you get home, call your friend and tell her that we are reserving the time. Then you can call back here and let us know whether or not to confirm the appointment." Mrs. Baxter had thought that to be a good idea. About an hour after she had gone home, the friend called, not Mrs. Baxter. "Do I have to wait until Thursday?" she asked. And my receptionist said, "No, we'll be able to get you in this afternoon. You come right on in at 2:30. Note that I did not make an appointment for the friend without her wish, but I reserved a time. I did not move so fast or so hard as to make the appointment. But I did offer the convenience in reserving my time, and I left a choice to the prospective patient. She could either confirm or deny. I have a letter on file from a doctor who says that he is using that idea and is averaging $1,000 a month in new appointments from that idea alone. You represents utilize your knowledge. Utilize every bit of knowledge you can acquire about the patient. If you were to see one of my case cards, you would see, in addition to a complete case history, how I keep up with my patients' hobbies and their problems. You might see the word fishing on one card, crocheting on another, boats on another, and a notation, "Wife has acne." As a result of these notes, when I'm talking to a patient, it is easy for me to refer to his hobby and talk about the things he likes. I can say, "Well, Jim, you keep right on with this and get your back straightened up, and you'll soon be able to get up in those high lakes where the big fish are, won't you?" Or when I'm seeing the elderly lady with arthritis, I can say, "It's going to be great when you get back to your crocheting. Are you doing any of it yet?" And the note on the card tells me that Mr. Brown lives for one thing only, and that's boating. And I can say to him, "If you keep up with the progress you are making, it won't be long until you're out in that boat again." And I say to the patient with the "Wife has acne" notation on his card, "Tell me, Jim, how is your wife's skin condition getting along?" Your receptionist should have cues on her cards also. It is convenient for her to have these and to guide the conversation in the reception room. You know how it is when you have someone in the reception room complaining about the weather, or politics, or religion. Subjects of that type don't belong in the reception room, but an alert receptionist can use her knowledge of those patients and change the conversation entirely. The girls in my office are very adept at this. They can change the subject under discussion any time by utilizing their knowledge of the patients. Be aware of your patient's improvements. My first experience with that truth happened years ago and concerned a man with a constant backache. After several adjustments, his back still ached, and after more adjustments, it still ached. One day he complained bitterly about his slow response. I got out his case history and looked it over, and I asked him, "John, how is your leg ache now?" He said it was better. I asked, "Are you sleeping any better now?" And he said that he was having no trouble sleeping anymore. I asked him, "Do you still have to get up nights frequently?" And he said that he could sleep the night through without getting up. So I said, "You see, John, you're making good progress. Many of your original complaints are gone. Of course, some of them remain, but it takes time to get well, doesn't it, John? Remember, it took time for you to get sick." This man had forgotten many of his original complaints. It's not unusual that patients forget complaints as they disappear. He remembers only the ones that are present. It is your duty to be aware and make the patient aware of the progress he is making. Know your patient's family. When a mother brings a child into my office, I know the child's name. I've made a point to have that information. I know her 6-year-old daughter's name is Michelle, and so when Michelle comes in, I call her by name. I'm interested in the husband's health and his work. The chiropractor who knows his patients and knows his patient's family and who utilizes that knowledge soon becomes the family chiropractor. L stands for love. Your love for your work and your love for your patients. Love that great power by which you work, the power that heals the sick and makes them strong. Remember, it is by your hand that this power works. Be proud as a member of the greatest profession in the world, and reflect often on the good you have done for your patients. Love your patients, and they will love you. You are great in their eyes. Act great. Be great. Do your best work with love in your heart. Be good to your patients, and they will be good to you. Here are a few actions that will demonstrate your love for your patients and your community. Be on time. Stay on time. Do not keep patients waiting. Your being late for appointments does not impress your patients. Wasting your own time is bad enough, but you have no right to waste the time of another. Many patients leave reception rooms because they cannot afford to waste time waiting for doctors who do not realize its value. Get to your office a little earlier than your appointment time. It helps you get into the proper frame of mind. If you are unavoidably delayed, instruct your receptionist to make a brief explanation, then move ahead. Soon you will be back on schedule. Send birthday cards to your patients. It's the little extra that makes you more than just the doctor. Send Thanksgiving cards. Send Christmas cards. When you travel, be sure to send a postcard to your patients. This is especially true if you are attending a research seminar or a convention. One busy doctor I know sent hundreds of greeting cards from Disneyland when he visited there, and now, a year later, his patients are still commenting on his thoughtfulness. Send thank you grams. I send them to cooperative patients, and I send them to patients who refer others to me. I send them to people I don't even know. For instance, if I see by the newspaper that Mr. Byron has been appointed an executive in the Boy Scouts, I mail him a thank you gram that says, "I am pleased to live in a community that has men of your caliber. Thanks for the interest you show in our boys." You can write thank you grams every day to your patients and to others in your town. You will get a good feeling in sending notes and cards, and doctor, the people who receive them will get a good feeling. They will not forget you. T stands for technique, a good chiropractic technique. Do you have a saleable technique? Remember, the best salesman in the world does not profit if he has nothing to sell. Are you developing your technique as well as you can? When a patient is on your adjusting table, do you give the adjustment you would want for your wife? Is it the adjustment you would want for your child? Is it the adjustment you would want? Are you adjusting him where he needs it, when he needs it, and as he needs it? Be honest with yourself and your patients. Use your best technique. Another phase of technique is good business procedure. Be businesslike by systematizing your paperwork. Once you have a good system, stick to it and see that your staff sticks to it. Be sure your patient has a clear understanding from the beginning of your fees and when you expect him to pay. Here is an appropriate proverb to remember. Doctor, collect thy fee while the patient aileth, for then thou art a god. For positive proof of the danger in using slipshod business technique, give your attention to Dr. Cullum's record, Busy but Broke. S, the last point in the results formula, stands for service, which should be uppermost in your mind. Service above self. That slogan should be a part of every chiropractor's creed. Service above self means keep the patient's welfare uppermost in your mind. Charge the proper fee, but give your patient all the service he needs, then give a little bit more. Here's an example of what happens when a little bit more service is given. I had been treating this patient for a difficult, long-standing condition. She had been very cooperative in following my instructions. The period of time I had planned to see her was drawing to a close. I wanted to express my appreciation for her cooperation and for her understanding that time was required to treat her illness. So I said this to her, Mrs. Will, you have been very cooperative, and I appreciate you. The treatment time we outlined in the beginning will be over next week. However, I want to prove my appreciation, and rather than conclude this service next week, I want to extend it the balance of the month. She was extremely pleased. In fact, she was so pleased a tear came in her eye, because I had done a little bit more than was required. Do that, doctor. Give a little more service than is expected of you, and you will receive more of everything in return. You have now heard the results formula. Listen to it every day until you know it and understand it and feel it. Remember, the results formula stands first on good chiropractic results. R stands for referral concept. E stands for educate. S stands for stimulate patients to refer. U stands for utilize your knowledge. L stands for love of doctor for patient. T stands for technique. And S stands for service. Results, the 7-point formula that gets new business from old business.